Buck Hartley was a very wealthy man. He owned 15,000 acres of prime Wyoming ranch land, 3 working cattle ranches, a luxury guest lodge that attracted visitors from around the world, and mineral rights that brought in money even while he slept. But now, he was getting old and weak. 72 years had weathered his face like the mountains he loved, and lately, he'd been thinking about something that kept him awake at night. One evening, as he sat quietly in his study at the main ranch house, he looked at the family pictures covering the wall. His wife Sarah, smiling in her wedding dress, his 4 children as babies, then teenagers, then adults, the ranch through the generations. He touched one frame gently and asked himself a question that had been burning in his heart. Who really loves me in this house? Who will stay by my side when I'm sick and helpless? Or are they all just waiting for me to die so they can fight over everything I've built? The thought made his chest tight. So Buck called his most trusted friend, his lawyer Jim Patterson, and his personal doctor, Dr. Reynolds, to his mansion. He sat them down in his study, poured them each a glass of whiskey, and said in a soft but firm voice, "Gentlemen, I want to pretend that I'm very sick, terminal. I want to see who in my family truly loves me and who's just circling like a vulture." Jim looked surprised but nodded slowly. "That's a wise idea, Buck, but we need to protect your assets. I'll open another account and move half your wealth there. That way, if anyone's just pretending to care, they won't find everything." Buck smiled grimly and agreed. Dr. Reynolds leaned forward. "I'll tell your family you have terminal silicosis, lung disease from all those years of ranch dust and silica exposure. I'll say you have maybe 6 months to live. I'll make it convincing." And that was how the plan started. The next morning, Buck began coughing loudly. He stayed in bed and stopped going outside. He refused to eat well and looked very weak. His wife Sarah and the children, Cole, the first son, Travis, the second son, Madison, the first daughter, and Emma, the youngest daughter, all became worried. "Let's call the doctor," Madison shouted, her voice filled with panic. Soon, Dr. Reynolds came and examined Buck in front of the whole family. He listened to Buck's lungs with his stethoscope, checked his vitals, and asked him to breathe deeply. Then he stepped back, removed his stethoscope, and looked at the family with the saddest face any of them had ever seen. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice heavy. "Your father is very sick. He has terminal silicosis. The scarring in his lungs is extensive. He may not live longer than 6 months." Everyone gasped. "What?" Emma cried out loudly, her hand flying to her mouth. "No, Daddy, please, don't leave me." Even Cole and Travis, the tough sons who prided themselves on being strong Wyoming cowboys, looked shocked. Madison grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Sarah put her hand on her chest and sat down slowly, her face pale. In the first few days, the whole family acted like they cared. They brought Buck food on trays decorated with flowers. They checked on him every few hours. They sat beside his bed and said sweet words. "We're here for you, Dad," Cole said, squeezing his father's hand. "You're the strongest man I know. You'll beat this," Travis added. "Daddy, we love you so much," Madison whispered, kissing his forehead. But after a week, things began to change. The masks began to fall. Sarah stopped coming to Buck's room. When Emma asked why, she said, "I can't watch him suffer like this. It breaks my heart." But her eyes were dry, and she turned away quickly. Madison said she was too busy to stay long. "I have a charity gala to plan, Emma. I'll visit tomorrow." But tomorrow never came. Travis said he had to travel to check on the south property. "Someone needs to make sure the ranch keeps running," he said, grabbing his truck keys. Cole, the eldest son, started showing more interest in the ranch operations than in his father's condition. One day, he walked into Buck's bedroom with some papers and told his father, "Dad, I think you should rest and not worry about business anymore. Let me handle the ranch now. You just focus on getting comfortable." Buck looked at him quietly through tired eyes and gave a weak nod. Deep inside, he was watching. He was taking notes on every word, every action, every person who walked through that door. Cole became the new face of Hartley Ranch operations. He moved into the main office, rearranged the furniture, and threw a big party to celebrate his transition into leadership. He bought a brand new $85,000 Ford F-350, candy apple red with all the upgrades. He went on a vacation to Jackson Hole with his rodeo friends and posted pictures of himself at expensive restaurants. Madison also took money, $50,000, claiming she needed it for new horses for the guest program. Instead, she bought designer Western wear, a $3,000 custom Stetson, alligator skin boots from Lucchese, and a Gucci saddle that she showed off on Instagram. Travis started spending lavishly too, wining and dining a young woman he'd met on a dating app, flying her to Aspen for the weekend. Meanwhile, Buck remained on his sickbed, pretending to be weaker each day. The only person who stayed by him all day, every day, was his youngest daughter, Emma. Emma would feed him warm soup when his hands shook too much to hold the spoon. She cleaned his room every morning, opening the windows to let in fresh air. She sang old cowboy songs to him, the ones he'd sung to her when she was a little. And at night, she even slept on a cot beside his bed, wrapped in one of his old ranch blankets. "Daddy, I'll never leave you," she cried one evening, holding his weathered hand. Buck squeezed his hand weakly, a real tear sliding down his cheek. She was the only light in this darkness. One evening, Emma went to her mother and said, "Mama, let's fly Daddy to the Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins. Maybe there's hope. Maybe there's a treatment." But Sarah shook her head sharply. No, Emma, that's too expensive. What if he dies there? We'll waste hundreds of thousands of dollars for nothing." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Mama, this is Daddy we're talking about." "I said no," Sarah snapped and walked away. That night, Emma cried beside her father's bed, holding his hand and wiping his forehead with a cool cloth. On the other side of the house, Cole threw another big party. Music thumped through the walls. Friends laughed and drank Buck's expensive whiskey. Cole raised a glass and told them, grinning, "Soon, boys, all of this will be mine." But unknown to him, his father was still watching, still listening, still pretending. Every morning, the Hanley mansion was quiet. Too quiet. Upstairs in his large bedroom, the old man lay helpless on his soft bed. His face looked tired and drawn. His chest rose and fell slowly. His cough was deep and dry, like something inside him was breaking apart. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Thank you, Emma. Thank you, my daughter." Emma, his youngest child, sat beside him holding his hand gently. She smiled through her tears. "I'm not going anywhere, Daddy. Not ever." She wiped his sweaty face with a warm towel, helped him sip water, and carefully fed him oatmeal with a small spoon. Sometimes when he coughed too hard, she would gently rub his chest and cry quietly when he wasn't looking. But what no one knew was that Buck Hartley was pretending. He wasn't really dying. He wanted to know who truly loved him and who was just waiting for him to die so they could take his wealth. One afternoon, when Emma stepped out to rinse the towel in the bathroom, Buck turned to the wall and whispered to himself, his voice breaking, "Is this how my life will end? This family I sacrificed everything for? They don't check on me. They don't care if I ate. Not even Sarah, my wife of 45 years. I gave them my life, my sweat, my name. Now they're counting my days. They can't even ask, 'Daddy, how are you today?' Just once." A tear dropped from his eye as he groaned softly. "Oh God, what did I do wrong?" While the old man lay coughing upstairs, music played loudly downstairs. Cole, his first son, had turned the entire great room into a party zone. He drank expensive wine, laughed with his rodeo buddies, and made loud phone calls like he already owned the whole ranch. He didn't check on his father, not even once. At the ranch headquarters one morning, Cole walked into the main office like he owned the world. He stood before the crew of veteran ranch hands, men who had worked this land for decades, and said proudly, "Good morning, everyone. My father is very sick and won't be coming back to work. From today forward, I'm in charge of Hartley Ranch operations." Some workers clapped a little, but it was hesitant. Others looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight from boot to boot. Mr. Red Murphy, an elderly cowboy who had worked for Buck Hartley for 30 years, stood up slowly, his weathered face full of respect. "Cole, your daddy's still alive. Shouldn't we wait for his word on this? I mean, out of respect." Cole slammed his hand on the desk, making everyone jump. "Are you telling me what to do in my father's company? My company now?" Another longtime hand, a woman named Linda who managed the books, stood up carefully.
Cole, we just want the ranch to be safe. Maybe we could form a transition team to support you until your daddy can...
Support me? Cole's face went red. He turned to the young man he'd hired as HR manager, one of his drinking buddies. Fire them. I don't want to see their faces tomorrow. The room went dead silent. What? Red Murphy's voice cracked. Fire me? Cole, I taught you how to rope a calf. I was there the day you were born. I don't care, Cole shouted, pointing at the door. Get out. Within minutes, security men entered and started escorting people out. Red Murphy, Linda, Dutch, Hank, Sam, cowboys who'd been with the Hartley family for decades, all walked out with their heads down, carrying boxes of their belongings. Red stopped at the door and looked back at Cole. You're making a mistake, son. A big one. Cole just smirked and turned away. When Emma heard what happened, she ran to the office. Cole, how could you fire Red? He's been with Daddy since before you were born. Emma, stay out of ranch business, Cole said dismissively, not even looking up from his phone. This is my business. This is Daddy's legacy you're destroying. Dad's dying, Cole said coldly. Someone has to make tough decisions. Now get out of my office. Emma stared at him, her brother, like she was looking at a stranger. Then she turned and ran back to the house, tears streaming down her face. Travis, the second son, was having his own plans. One afternoon, he made some phone calls, met with some real estate agents, and by the end of the week, he'd done something unthinkable. He listed Buck's pride and joy, Hartley Mountain Lodge, for sale. The lodge was a beautiful luxury guest ranch nestled in the mountains with log cabins, a main hall with a massive stone fireplace, and views that brought people from all over the world. Buck had built it with his own hands, with Sarah by his side, back when they were young and full of dreams. They'd celebrated every anniversary there. It's where Buck had proposed to Sarah under the stars. Travis sold it for $4.5 million. When Emma found out, she confronted him in the driveway. Travis, how could you sell the lodge? That's Daddy's favorite place in the whole world. Travis barely looked at her, loading bags into his truck. He's dying, Emma. Wake up. We need liquid assets. The ranch operations need money. Cole's bleeding us dry with his parties. But that place meant everything to him. Meant, Travis said, past tense. He's not going to use it again, is he? Emma slapped him, hard, across the face. Travis touched his cheek, shocked. You're a monster, Emma whispered, and walked away. But what Travis didn't know was that Jim Patterson, Buck's lawyer, had been watching everything. Jim quietly arranged for his own trusted buyers to purchase the lodge. They paid Travis the money, took the deed, and immediately transferred everything to Jim's secure safe. The lodge still belonged to Buck Hartley. Travis just didn't know it yet. A week later, Travis sold something else, Willow Creek Ranch, 2,000 acres of pristine land with natural springs and water rights. It was land that Buck's grandfather had homesteaded in 1892, land that had survived the Depression, droughts, and wars. Family land, sacred land. Travis sold it for $6 million to developers. Once again, Jim Patterson's people bought it through front companies. The documents went straight into Jim's safe. When Cole found out about the sales, he lost his mind. He stormed into Travis's room at 10 o'clock at night, kicking the door open. You sold the lodge? That was supposed to be mine. Travis jumped up from his bed. Yours? It was all of ours, you idiot. I'm the oldest. I run this ranch. You're running it into the ground, Travis shouted back. Cole grabbed Travis by the shirt and threw him against the wall. Travis punched Cole in the jaw. Cole tackled him, and they crashed through Travis's dresser, sending lamps and picture frames flying. Madison ran in screaming, Stop! You're gonna kill yourselves! Emma appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Stop it, both of you! Daddy is dying upstairs and you're fighting over his money like animals! Both brothers ignored her. Cole punched Travis in the stomach, Travis grabbed Cole's head and kneed him in the face. Security finally pulled them apart, both of them bleeding and breathing hard. Emma looked at them with disgust. I hope you're proud of yourselves, she said quietly, and walked back upstairs to her father's room. Madison wasn't innocent either. While her brothers fought over properties and power, she was focused on her image. She spent $50,000 that she claimed was for upgrading the guest program horses. Instead, she bought designer clothes, custom boots, a new luxury saddle, and flew to rodeos in Texas and Montana, posting glamorous photos online with hashtags like Ranch Life and Cowgirl Millionaire. When she heard that Travis had sold Willow Creek Ranch, she exploded. She found him in the kitchen and screamed, That land was supposed to be mine! I wanted to build my equestrian center there! Too late, Travis said, eating a sandwich. Madison slapped him across the face, hard.
Travis dropped his sandwich, shocked. Then he slapped her back. Madison screamed and lunged at him, and they started pulling each other's hair and knocking over chairs. Agatha, the housekeeper, ran to get Emma. Emma rushed in and pulled them apart. "What is wrong with you people?" she screamed. "Our father is dying upstairs, dying, and you're all acting like he's already dead and you're fighting over the scraps." Madison straightened her hair, breathing hard. "He basically is dead, Emma. Stop being naive." Emma stared at her sister, horrified. "How can you say that?" Madison rolled her eyes and walked away. Things got even worse when Sarah, Buck's wife of 45 years, started showing her true colors. One afternoon, she walked into Buck's bedroom while Emma was reading to him. Sarah looked around, wrinkled her nose, and said sharply, "This room stinks like death. I can't breathe in here. It smells like someone already died." Buck, lying in bed, turned his face away slowly. Emma stood up, angry. "Mama, that's a terrible thing to say."
Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "It's true. Why does it smell so bad? Open the windows." "They are open, Mama." Sarah shook her head. "I can't stand this anymore. This room is depressing. Your father will sleep in the back guest room from now on." "What? Mama, this is his room. He built this house." "And I'm still his wife, and I decide what happens in this house," Sarah snapped. She clapped her hands twice loudly. "Driver, security." 2 ranch hands appeared at the door, looking uncomfortable. "Carry him to the guest room, now." "No," Emma cried, standing in front of the bed. "Don't you dare touch my father." But the ranch hands had to follow orders. They gently lifted Buck, who remained quiet, still pretending to be too weak to protest. As they carried him out, he looked around his bedroom, the room where he'd slept for 40 years, where his children were born, where he dreamed and planned and built his empire with sad, distant eyes. Emma followed, crying as they placed her father in a small guest room at the back of the house. That night, Emma slept on the floor beside his new bed, holding his hand. "I'm so sorry, Daddy. I'm so sorry." Buck squeezed her hand weakly, but inside, his heart was shattering into 1,000 pieces. Things took an even darker turn when Sarah decided she was lonely. One morning, she hired a new ranch hand named Jake. He was 29 years old, tall, muscular, with a charming smile and smooth words. "He's my personal driver," Sarah announced to the family at dinner. "I need someone to take me into town whenever I want." Cole shrugged. Travis didn't care. Madison was on her phone. Only Emma looked suspicious. "We already have a driver, Mama," Emma said carefully. "Well, now I have my own," and that was that. She gave Jake the guest house to live in, which was actually nicer than the bunkhouse where the real ranch hand stayed. Suddenly, Jake was wearing expensive new boots, a fancy watch, and driving Sarah's Mercedes into town several times a week. The ranch staff started whispering, but no one confronted Sarah until Emma caught them. It was late one night, around 11 o'clock. Emma couldn't sleep, so she decided to go check on the horses in the barn. As she approached, she heard sounds coming from the hayloft above, giggling, whispers. Emma's stomach dropped. Slowly, she climbed the wooden ladder. What she saw made her freeze in horror. There, in the hay, under the moonlight streaming through the loft window, were her mother and Jake, half-dressed, wrapped around each other like teenagers. "Mama!" Emma screamed. Sarah jumped up, her face going white. Jake scrambled to pull on his shirt. "Emma, this isn't what it looks like," Sarah stammered. "Daddy is dying in that house, and you're up here with him?" Emma shouted, her voice breaking. Jake grabbed his boots and ran down the ladder, nearly falling. Sarah reached for Emma. "Emma, please, let me explain." Emma jerked away from her mother's touch. "Explain what? That you're a liar? That you abandoned your husband when he needed you most? That you brought your boy toy into our home while Daddy's lying in that back room thinking his wife still loves him?" "I'm lonely," Sarah cried. "Your father can't. He doesn't talk to me anymore. He's dying," Emma screamed, "and all you can think about is yourself?" Sarah grabbed Emma's arm. "Don't you dare tell anyone about this. Not your brothers, not your sister, no one." Emma stared at her mother like she was looking at a stranger. Then she pulled her arm free and climbed back down the ladder. She ran all the way back to the house, into the guest room, and collapsed beside her father's bed, sobbing into the blanket. Buck, still pretending to sleep, heard every sound. Another piece of his heart broke off and died. By the 7th week, things had reached a boiling point. Cole had ruined the ranch operations so badly that suppliers were refusing to deliver hay. Travis had sold 2 major properties. Madison was spending money like water, and Sarah had completely abandoned her husband for a man half her age.
But then something happened that changed everything. Travis was out riding the fence line on one of the old Hartley properties up in the mountains, a remote section that nobody had visited in years. As he guided his horse through a thick stand of pines, he noticed something strange, a dark opening in the rocks, half hidden by brush and fallen logs. A cave. Travis dismounted and walked closer, his curiosity getting the better of him. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The cave went deep into the mountain, and the air coming out of it was cool and damp. That's when he remembered the old stories. His grandfather used to tell tales about a lost gold mine somewhere on Hartley land from the 1800s when prospectors flooded Wyoming looking for fortune. Most people thought it was just a legend. But what if it wasn't? Travis immediately called Madison. "I found something. Meet me at the north gate, and don't tell anyone." An hour later, both of them stood at the cave entrance with headlamps and rope. "Are you sure about this?" Madison asked, looking nervous. "There could be millions of dollars in there," Travis said. "Old gold, artifacts. This could solve all our money problems." They should have called professionals. They should have gotten proper equipment. They should have told someone where they were going, but they didn't. They went in. The cave started wide enough for them to walk side by side, but after about 100 feet, it began to narrow. Their headlamps cut through the blackness, revealing old wooden support beams that were rotting and covered in moss. "Look," Madison pointed, "mining equipment." It was true. There were old pickaxes, rusted buckets, and even a broken lantern half buried in the dirt. "There was a mine here," Travis said excitedly. "Come on, let's go deeper." They pushed forward. The tunnel split into 3 directions. Travis chose the middle one, and they kept going down, down, down into the mountain. That's when they noticed something that should have made them turn back. Water. It was seeping from the walls, creating small streams on the floor that trickled deeper into the darkness. "Should we go back?" Madison asked, her voice echoing strangely. "Just a little further," Travis said. The tunnel narrowed again. Travis had to crouch, then crawl on his hands and knees. Madison followed behind him, her breathing getting faster. "Travis, I don't like this." "Almost there. I can see the tunnel opening up ahead." But it didn't open up. Instead, Travis reached a point where the passage was barely wider than his shoulders. He tried to push through, wriggling forward on his stomach. That's when he got stuck. His shoulders wedged between the rocks. He couldn't move forward. He tried to push backward, but he couldn't get leverage. Panic shot through him like electricity. "Madison, I'm stuck." "What? I can't move. I can't." That's when they heard it. A rumbling sound, deep in the mountain, and then water, not just seeping, but flowing, started rushing into the tunnel behind them. Madison screamed, "Travis, water!" Travis tried desperately to free himself, scraping his shoulders raw against the rocks, but he was wedged in tight. The water was rising fast, now up to his waist, then his chest.
"Get help," Travis screamed. "Madison, get out! Get help now!" Madison turned and scrambled back through the tunnel, splashing through the rising water, her headlamp bouncing wildly off the walls. She climbed, crawled, ran, gasping for air until she burst out of the cave entrance into the sunlight. She ran to her horse, mounted, and galloped toward the ranch house faster than she'd ever ridden in her life. Madison burst through the front door of the ranch house, screaming, "Travis is stuck in a cave! The water's rising! He's going to drown!" Everyone in the living room looked up in shock. Cole jumped to his feet. "What cave? What are you talking about?" "The old mine up north. He's stuck and there's water and he's going to die." Madison was hysterical, gasping for air. Sarah grabbed her phone. "I'm calling 911. But Emma was already moving. She grabbed her truck keys and ran for the door. "Where? Show me exactly where." "Emma, wait for the professionals," Sarah called out. "No time," Emma shouted back. She turned to her mother with fire in her eyes. "Mama, call Red Murphy, Dutch, and Hank. Call them right now." "But Cole fired them." "I don't care. Call them. They know these mountains better than anyone." Emma raced to the equipment shed, grabbed a climbing rope, a professional-grade headlamp, and her wetsuit from her wilderness guide gear. By the time she loaded everything into her truck, Madison had climbed in the passenger seat. "Let's go," Emma shouted, and they tore out of the driveway, gravel spraying. 10 minutes later, 3 trucks pulled up to the cave site almost simultaneously. Red Murphy, Dutch, and Hank, the men Cole had fired, jumped out with rescue gear. "Where is he?" Red asked immediately, all business. Madison pointed with a shaking hand. "Deep in the middle tunnel. He's wedged in a narrow passage and the water's rising." Red looked at Emma. "Miss Emma, you can't go in there. It's too dangerous." Emma was already pulling on her wetsuit. Red, I'm the smallest person here. I'm a certified cave rescue guide, and he's my brother. Emma, I'm going, she shouted, tears streaming down her face. Tie the rope around me. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, pull me out whether I want to come or not. Red looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. You're your father's daughter, that's for sure. They tied the safety rope around Emma's waist. She checked her headlamp, took 3 deep breaths, and entered the cave. The water was already ankle-deep at the entrance. By the time she reached the split in the tunnel, it was up to her knees. She pushed forward into the middle passage, crawling where the ceiling got low. "Travis!" she shouted. "Travis, can you hear me?" A weak voice echoed back. Emma, help me, please." She crawled faster, the water now up to her chest. The passage got narrower and narrower. Finally, her headlamp illuminated her brother's face. The water was up to his chin. His lips were blue. He was shaking violently. "I'm here," Emma said, reaching him. "I've got you." "I can't move," Travis gasped, his voice breaking. "Emma, I'm so sorry. I was looking for gold, and Daddy's dying, and I'm such an idiot, and I don't want to die like this." "Shut up and breathe," Emma commanded. She braced her feet against the rocks and grabbed Travis under his arms. "When I say pull, you push with everything you've got." "I can't." "Yes, you can. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Emma pulled with every ounce of strength in her body. Travis pushed. Nothing happened. The water rose over Travis's mouth. He tilted his head back, gasping for air through his nose. "Again!" Emma screamed. "Don't you dare die on me." She pulled. Travis pushed. Emma felt something give, just slightly. The water was now over Travis's face. Emma took a huge breath and dove under, wrapping her arms around her brother's chest, planting her feet against the rock and pulling with everything she had. Something popped. Travis came free. They both surfaced, coughing, gasping for air. Emma grabbed Travis and dragged him backward through the tunnel. The water was pouring in faster now. They swam, crawled, and pulled themselves through the passages. Outside, Red felt the rope jerk. "Pull!" he shouted. All 3 men grabbed the rope and hauled with all their strength. Emma and Travis burst out of the cave entrance, collapsing on the rocky ground, coughing up water and gasping for air. Red and the others rushed forward, wrapping them in blankets. "You're okay," Red said, checking Travis's pulse. "You're both okay." Travis was crying, shaking uncontrollably. "I almost died. I almost died looking for more money when we already have everything, and Daddy's dying and I wasn't even there." Emma just held her brother while he sobbed. Cole arrived 20 minutes later, in his fancy truck. He got out, looked at Travis on the ground, and said, "What the hell were you thinking?" Then his phone rang, and he walked away talking about a hay delivery. Sarah never came at all. Travis spent the night in the hospital for observation. Emma sat beside his bed, still in her damp clothes, exhausted but unable to leave. Travis looked at his little sister with red, puffy eyes. "You saved my life." "Yeah," Emma said quietly. "Why? After everything we've done, after how we've treated Daddy, how we've treated you." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Because you're my brother, and that's what family does. Real family." Travis started crying again. "What's wrong with us, Emma? When did we become these people?" "I don't know. I don't know." Cole visited for exactly 10 minutes. He stood at the foot of the bed in his pockets and said, "Glad you're okay, man. But seriously, that was stupid." Then his phone rang and he left, taking the call in the hallway. Sarah called once to check in but didn't visit. The only person who stayed was Anna. By the 8th week, word had spread through the ranching community that Buck Hartley was dying. His younger brother, Uncle Ray, and several cousins decided to make the drive from Montana to pay their respects. They arrived on a Sunday afternoon in 3 pickup trucks, bringing food, supplies, and flowers. They walked up to the front door and knocked. Sarah opened it, still in her silk robe, even though it was 2 in the afternoon. Her eyes narrowed when she saw them. "What are you people doing here?" she asked coldly. Uncle Ray, a rather man in his late 60s who looked a lot like Buck, removed his hat respectfully. "Sarah, we heard Buck is sick. Real sick. We came to see him. To help if we can." "Help?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Where were you all when he was healthy and rich, when he was building this empire? You didn't come around then."
Sarah, that's not fair, Uncle Ray started. Now he's dying and you show up like vultures, like you're going to get something? Is that it? Buck is Carson cousin. Martha, please, we just want to see our family, to pray with him, to get out, Sarah screamed. All of you, there's no space here. We don't need fake family love. Leave this property now before I call security. Uncle Ray looked heartbroken. Sarah, he's my brother. I just want to say goodbye. I said leave. The security guard, looking uncomfortable, stepped forward and opened the gate wider. Uncle Ray put his hat back on, tears in his eyes. Tell Buck, tell him we love him. Tell him we're praying for him. Sarah slammed the door in their faces. They got back in their trucks and drove away slowly. From an upstairs window, Emma watched the whole thing, tears streaming down her face. She turned and saw her father watching too, from the back guest room window, his hand pressed against the glass. A single tear rolled down Buck Hartley's weathered cheek. By week 9, the consequences of Cole's mismanagement were impossible to ignore. The main ranch operation was hemorrhaging money. The inexperienced cowboys Cole had hired didn't know the land. Cattle kept getting lost in the back sections. 3 calves died because nobody noticed they were sick. The hay supplier cut them off because Cole hadn't paid the bills. Several major buyers canceled their contracts because the quality of the beef had dropped dramatically. The bank called about missed loan payments. Cole called an emergency family meeting. Everyone gathered in the living room, everyone except Buck and Emma, who refused to leave her father's side. Cole stood at the front, sweating despite the air conditioning. We have a serious problem. The ranch operations are losing money. A lot of money. How much? Travis asked, his voice tight.
Cole loosened his collar. About $200,000 in the last 2 months. What? Madison shot to her feet. How is that even possible? The cattle operation isn't profitable right now, Cole admitted. We've had losses, some buyers backed out, and the new crew is still learning. Travis stood up, his face red. I told you firing Red and those guys was stupid. They knew this ranch inside and out. They knew every section, every water source, every... Shut up, Cole shouted. You're the one who sold 2 major properties. To get money because you were wasting it. They moved toward each other, fists clenched. Sarah stepped between them. Stop it, both of you. She took a breath and looked at Cole. What do we need to do? Cole ran a hand through his hair. We need capital, fast. I think we need to sell more assets. Like what? Madison asked nervously. The north section, 2,000 acres. We can get maybe $3 million for it. Emma's voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. She was standing there, her face pale with anger. That's BLM grazingly land. You can't sell it. It's leased federal land. Emma, stay out of this, Cole said dismissively. I won't stay out of it. That's Daddy's legacy you're destroying piece by piece. Dad's dying, Cole roared. Someone has to make the hard decisions. Hard decisions? Emma's voice broke. You fired everyone who knew how to run this ranch. You bought trucks and threw parties and wasted money like it was water. And now you want to sell more of what Daddy built? Get out of here, Emma, Sarah said coldly. This is business. You wouldn't understand. Emma looked at her mother with such sadness and disgust that Sarah actually looked away. You're all destroying him, and he's not even dead yet. She turned and walked back upstairs. Later that evening, tensions were still high. The family sat scattered around the living room in angry silence. Travis was on his phone, Madison was filing her nails, Cole was drinking whiskey straight from the bottle. Sarah sat in the armchair, staring at nothing. Finally, Sarah spoke. We need to call Jim Patterson. Everyone looked at her. Why? Cole asked. We need to know what's in your father's will. Sarah said flatly. We need to know where we stand, what belongs to who. That way we can plan accordingly and stop fighting over everything. Travis nodded slowly. Actually, that makes sense. Madison looked up. Yeah, if we know what we're each getting, maybe we can make better decisions. Cole shrugged. Fine by me. Call him. Sarah picked up her phone and made the call. Jim, it's Sarah Hartley. We need you to come to the house tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. The family wants to know about Buck's will. Yes, all of us. Thank you. She hung up and looked at her children. He'll be here tomorrow. That night, nobody slept well. Each of them lay in their beds thinking about money, about properties, about what they might inherit. They made mental calculations, thought about what they'd sell first, what they'd keep, how much they'd be worth. Only Emma, sleeping on the cot beside her father's bed, wasn't thinking about money at all. She was thinking about how much she loved him and how she'd give anything to make him truly well again. The next morning at exactly 10 o'clock, Jim Patterson pulled up to the ranch house in his old Ford truck. He was a man in his mid-60s, lean and weathered like Buck, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. The family was already gathered in the living room. Cole sat in Buck's favorite chair, Travis was on the couch, legs spread wide. Madison had claimed the love seat, and Sarah sat in the armchair by the window, her back straight, her face carefully composed. Emma was noticeably absent. She was upstairs with her father. Jim walked in carrying his leather briefcase. "Morning, everyone." "Good morning, Jim," Sarah said with a tight smile. "Thank you for coming." "Of course." Jim sat down in the chair they'd left for him and placed his briefcase on his lap. "Sarah said you wanted to discuss Buck's will?" "Yes," Cole said immediately, leaning forward. "We need to know what's in it. Dad's been sick for weeks now, and we need to plan accordingly. You know, for the ranch operations, the properties, all of it." Jim nodded slowly, his face unreadable. "I understand your concern." "So, can you read it to us?" Madison asked eagerly. Jim opened his briefcase and pulled out a single folder. He set it on the coffee table. The family leaned forward, eyes locked on it. "Before I address your question, I want to make something very clear about the law. Are you all listening?" They nodded. "A will is a legal document that outlines a person's wishes after death. The key word there is after. A will has no legal force while the person is still alive." Travis frowned. "Okay, but..." "Which means, even if Buck had a completed will, I could not, by law, read it to you while he's still breathing." Silence. "What?" Cole said slowly. "The contents of a will remain confidential until after the person's death. That's the law. I couldn't read it to you, even if I wanted to." Sarah's face went pale. "So we just wait?" "Yes." "For him to die?" Madison said. Voice small. "Yes, Madison. You wait for your father to die before you find out what you get from his death." The words hung in the air like poison. Travis looked down at his hands, ashamed. Cole cleared his throat. "Well, okay, but at least tell us, does he have a will? Is there one prepared?" Jim closed his briefcase with a decisive click. "No." "No?" Sarah repeated. "Your husband does not have a completed will. He had an appointment with me to create one about 3 months ago, but he fell ill before we could finalize it." "So what happens to everything?" Cole asked, standing too. "That depends on state law and what Buck decides to do going forward. If he recovers enough to complete a will, he will. If not, his estate will be handled according to Wyoming intestacy laws." "And what does that mean?" Travis asked. "It means it will be divided according to legal formulas. The court will decide. It could take years to sort out. It could cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Family members could fight over everything." Jim looked at each of them. "Or, and here's a thought, you could stop worrying about his money and start taking care of your father." The room went dead silent. Jim walked in up carrying his leather briefcase. "Buck is still alive. He's upstairs in that back guest room that you moved him to, Sarah. He can still hear. He can still see. He's watching all of you, and you're all down here trying to divide up his legacy like he's already in the ground." Sarah's face flushed red.
"You want my advice?" Jim said, heading toward the door. "Stop selling his properties. Stop fighting each other. Stop planning his funeral. And start acting like people who actually love him." He walked out and closed the door behind him. Nobody moved. Finally, Cole punched the wall, putting a hole in the drywall. "Damn it!" Travis stood up and stormed out of the house. Madison started crying quietly. Sarah just sat there, staring at nothing. Upstairs in the BAP guest room, Buck had heard every single word through the crack in the door that Emma always left open. He lay on the bed, his eyes closed, and whispered to himself, "They can't even wait. They can't even wait for me to die before they fight over the scraps." Emma, sitting beside him, squeezed his hand gently. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. By week 11, Emma was exhausted. Dark circles ringed her eyes. She'd lost weight. Her hands shook from lack of sleep. But still, she stayed. Every single day and night, she was there. She fed Buck oatmeal and soup with a spoon. She bathed him with warm cloths, carefully and respectfully. She read him chapters from Louis L'Amour westerns, his favorite. She sang him old Johnny Cash songs, her voice cracking with emotion. And at night, she slept on that cot beside his bed, wrapped in one of his old ranch coats that still smelled like leather and hay and home. "Daddy, please eat just a little more," she whispered one evening, holding a spoonful of broth to his lips. "You need your strength." Buck, still pretending, but his heart breaking for her, opened his mouth and took a small sip. "Thank you, Emma girl. You're too good to me." "No such thing as too good," Emma said, wiping his chin gently. "You're my daddy. I'd do anything for you." Downstairs, another fight was breaking out. Cole and Travis were screaming at each other about money again. Sarah was yelling at both of them. Madison was crying about something, her voice shrill and dramatic. Emma heard it all. She covered her father's ears with her hands, tears streaming down her face. "Don't listen to them, Daddy," she whispered. "Don't listen." That night, after everyone had finally gone to bed, Emma sat beside her father's bed and made a decision. "Daddy, we're leaving. I'm getting you out of here." Buck's eyes opened slowly. Even pretending, he looked at her with love. "This place is poison," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "All they do is fight and spend your money and wait for you to die. I won't let you spend your last days like this." She took his hand. "I'm taking you home, to the mountain ranch, where you started, where it's peaceful." Buck squeezed his hand weakly. The next morning, before anyone else was awake, Emma carefully helped her father into her truck. She'd loaded blankets, pillows, food, and medicine in the back. She drove slowly, carefully, away from the mansion and toward the mountains. 3 hours later, they arrived at Hartley's original ranch, a small, humble property with a 2-room cabin, a barn, and 200 acres of pristine wilderness. This was where Buck had started 50 years ago with nothing but a dream and calloused hands. Emma helped her father inside and settled him in the main room on a comfortable bed by the window. The air was clean, the view was mountains and meadows. The only sounds were birds and wind through the pines. Buck breathed deeply for the first time in weeks. "Better?" Emma asked, spreading a quilt over him. "Much better," Buck whispered, a real smile crossing his face. Word spread quickly through the small mountain community. By evening, neighbors started arriving. Old ranchers who'd Buck had helped over the years, cowboys he'd given jobs to, families whose kids he paid school fees for. People he'd lent money to during hard times, never asking it back. They brought venison stew in mason jars, fresh-baked bread wrapped in cloth, firewood for the stove, wildflower bouquets, handwritten prayers. An old-timer named Charlie, who must have been 80 if he was a day, sat beside Buck's bed and took his hand. "Buck Hartley, you gave me my first job in 1985, taught me everything I know about ranching. You're the best man I ever met." Another neighbor, a woman named Ruth, said, "You helped pay for my daughter's cancer treatments. Never asked for a penny back. She's 25 now, healthy and strong because of you." A younger couple came by. "You gave us a loan when the bank wouldn't. We got our ranch started because you believed in us." One after another they came. They shared stories, they thanked him, they prayed over him. Emma watched with tears in her eyes, realizing something she'd never fully understood. Her father hadn't just built a business empire. He'd built a legacy of kindness. On the third day at the mountain ranch, an old man arrived at sunset.
He was Native American, probably in his 70s, with long silver-gray hair and eyes that seemed to see through everything. He carried a leather bag and walked with a carved wooden staff. Emma met him at the door. "Can I help you?" "I am Joseph Running Bear," the man said in a deep, calm voice. "I heard Buck Hartley is here. I came to see him." "Are you a doctor?" "I am a healer. May I see him?" Emma hesitated, then nodded and led him inside. Joseph stood at the foot of Buck's bed for a long moment, just looking at him. Then he said, "May I speak with him alone?" "I don't leave my father," Emma said firmly. "I understand," Joseph said with a small smile, "but some conversations are meant to be private. Trust me, daughter, I mean him no harm." Something in the old man's eyes made Emma believe him. She nodded and stepped outside, closing the door gently. Joseph pulled a chair close to Buck's bedside and sat down slowly. He studied his face in the lamplight for a full minute without speaking. Finally, he said quietly, "You are not dying." Buck's eyes snapped open. Joseph smiled. "Your eyes have clear. Your spirit is too strong. You carry pain, yes, but not in your lungs, in your heart." Buck stared at him, then slowly sat up straighter in the bed. The pretense fell away. "How did you know?" "I have seen many dying men," Joseph said simply. "You are not one of them." Buck was silent for a moment, then he sighed deeply. "You're right. I'm not sick. It was a test. Tell me." And he did. He told the stranger everything. About the plan with the doctor and lawyer, about pretending to be dying, about watching his family tear itself apart over greed, about the betrayals, the affairs, the fights, the property sales, about Emma being the only one who stayed. When he finished, Joseph nodded slowly, as if none of it surprised him. "You are a wise man, Buck Hartley. Many people fear death. You used it as a mirror to see the true hearts of those around you." "It broke mine," he admitted, his voice cracking. "But you found one true heart," Joseph said, gesturing toward the door where Emma waited. "Your daughter. That is more than most men find in a lifetime." "What do I do now?" Buck asked. "How do I face them? How do I tell them?" Joseph stood up and placed a weathered hand on Buck's shoulder. "You return to your big house, you gather them all, and you speak your truth. Some will beg forgiveness, some will make excuses, some will be angry, but you will finally see them with clear eyes, and they will finally see themselves. And then? Then you build something new with the one who proved worthy. Your daughter has earned her place. Honor that." Buck nodded slowly. Joseph walked to the door, then turned back. "One more thing, Buck Hartley." "Yes?" "You tested their love. Make sure you do not let this test poison your own heart. Anger is a fire. It can warm you, or it can consume you. Choose wisely."
And with that, Joseph Running Bear walked out into the twilight and disappeared down the mountain path. 2 days later, after 12 weeks of being sick, Buck Hartley made his decision. "Emma," he said that morning, standing up from his bed with no trembling, no weakness. "It's time to go home." Emma's eyes widened. "Daddy, you're standing." Buck smiled at his daughter. "I have something to tell you, something important." He sat her down and told her everything, the whole truth, the plan, the pretending, the test. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "You were never sick?" "No, baby girl. I wanted to know who truly loved me. And you," his voice broke, "you passed every test. You were the only one who stayed." Emma started crying. "I would have stayed even if it was real, Daddy. I love you. Not your money, not the ranch, you." Buck pulled her into a hug. "I know. That's why everything I have is going to be yours." "Daddy!" "No arguments," Buck said firmly. "Now let's go home. I have some things to say to the rest of them." They loaded into Emma's truck. As they drove down the mountain toward the main ranch, Buck felt strong, clear-headed, and ready. It was time to face his family. When Buck's truck pulled through the gates of the main ranch at 11 o'clock in the morning, the first person to see him was one of the young ranch hands Cole had hired. The kid was carrying a feed bucket when he looked up, saw Buck Hartley stepping out of the passenger side, strong, steady, wearing his black Stetson and walking like a man who owned the world, and dropped the bucket with a clang. "Mr. Hartley?" the kid stammered. Buck just tipped his hat and kept walking toward the house, Emma beside him. Inside, Madison was on the couch scrolling through her phone, looking at pictures of horses she wanted to buy. She heard the front door open and glanced up casually. Then she screamed, "Daddy, you're standing! You're okay! How? What? The doctor said—" Buck looked at his daughter calmly. "Hello, Madison." Travis appeared at the top of the stairs. Having heard Madison scream, he froze mid-step, his hand gripping the banister. "Dad? How are you? You were dying." Cole walked out of the office holding a glass of whiskey, clearly already drinking even though it was still morning. When he saw his father standing in the foyer, strong and healthy, the glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the hardwood floor. "What the hell?" Cole breathed. From the kitchen, Sarah's voice called out, "Who broke something again? I swear, you people." She walked into the foyer and stopped dead. Her face went white as paper. "Buck, you're standing? Buck removed his hat slowly. "Hello, Sarah." Everyone stared at him like they were seeing a ghost. "Everyone sit down," Buck said, his voice calm but commanding. "Living room, now." Nobody argued. They all moved like sleepwalkers into the living room and sat down. Travis on the couch, Madison in the armchair, Cole standing by the fireplace, Sarah on the love seat, her hands shaking. Emma stood beside her father, strong and silent. Buck remained standing in the center of the room, his presence filling every corner. "I imagine you all have questions," Buck said. "How?" Madison asked, her voice breaking. "The doctor said you had silicosis, terminal, 6 months. How are you better?" Buck looked at each of them slowly. "The doctor said I had silicosis because I asked him to say that." Silence. "What?" Travis said slowly. "I was never sick," Buck said clearly. "I don't have silicosis. I don't have lung disease. I don't have anything wrong with me at all." Cole's jaw dropped. You were faking?" "Yes." "Why would you—" Sarah started. "To test you," Buck interrupted, his voice hard now, "to see who you really are, to know who loves Buck Hartley the man and who just loves Buck Hartley's money." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small electronic device. He walked to the television and connected it. "What's that?" Madison asked nervously. "Cameras," Buck said. "I had them installed in my bedroom, in the hallways. I recorded everything." The TV screen flickered to life. Footage appeared. Sarah complaining about the smell, Cole throwing parties, Travis on the phone selling properties, Madison showing off designer boots on Instagram, the fights, the screaming, Sarah with Jake in the barn, all of it. The family watched in horror, unable to look away, unable to speak. When the footage ended, Buck turned off the TV. The silence in the room was deafening. Buck stood before them like a judge before criminals. "Cole," he turned to his firstborn. Cole looked up, his face pale. "You were supposed to carry on the family name," Buck said quietly. "You were supposed to honor what I built. Instead, you fired men who worked for me for 30 years. Men who taught you how to ride a horse, how to rope a calf, how to be a cowboy." Cole looked down. "Red Murphy held you when you were born. Dutch taught you how to fix a fence. Hank showed you how to read the weather. And you fired them like they were nothing, like garbage." "Dad, I was trying to—" "You threw parties with my money," Buck's thunderstrung. "You bought expensive trucks. You ruined the ranch operation so badly that we lost $200,000 in 2 months. Suppliers won't deliver to us. Buyers canceled contracts.
You destroyed in weeks what took me 40 years to build." Cole's eyes filled with tears. Buck walked closer. "The main ranch, the one you've been running into the ground, Red Murphy is back in charge as of today. And you," he pointed to the door, "you're fired. From my company, from my ranch, from my family business." "Dad, please." "Get a job somewhere else," Buck said coldly. "Learn what it means to work for something instead of inherit it. Learn what it means to build instead of destroy. Maybe someday you'll understand what you threw away." "Daddy, I'm sorry." Cole broke down, falling to his knees. "I'm so sorry. Please give me another chance." Buck looked at him without pity. "I gave you 40 years of chances. Pack your things. You have until sunset." He turned to Travis. "Travis, my second son, the one I thought was smart." Travis was already crying. "You sold Hartley Mountain Lodge, the place where I proposed to your mother under the stars, where we celebrated every anniversary, the place I built with my own hands when we were young and didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. I needed the money. You sold Willow Creek Ranch, 2,000 acres that my grandfather homesteaded in 1892, land that he died protecting during the Depression, land that has been in this family for over 130 years. Travis sobbed into his hands. "You want to know something?" Buck reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. He opened it and showed him the documents. Jim Patterson bought them both back, through his people. I still own them. Travis looked up shocked. "That $10 million you made, that was your inheritance. You already sold it. It's gone. You sold your own birthright for cash you wasted on fancy dinners and trips with women you barely know." "Dad, I didn't know." "Worse than that," Buck said, his voice dropping low. "You nearly died in that cave looking for more gold, more money, when you had everything. When your father was supposedly dying upstairs, you were crawling through a hole in the ground looking for treasure, like a greedy fool." Buck shook his head. "Thank God for your sister. She risked her life to save yours. She's the only reason you're standing here." Travis couldn't speak. He just wept. "You're done here too," Buck said. "Pack your things, find your own way. Maybe someday you'll learn that family is worth more than money, but you won't learn it from me. Not anymore." He turned to Madison. "Madison, my daughter." Madison looked up, mascara running down her face. "You took $50,000 and said it was for horses. You bought designer clothes instead. You posted pictures on the internet showing off your wealth while your father was supposedly dying upstairs. I'm sorry, Daddy." Buck held his hand. "You can stay." Madison's eyes widened with hope, but not as family. "As a ranch hand, minimum wage. You'll live in the bunkhouse, you'll muck stalls, you'll fix fences, you'll do the hard, dirty work that keeps this ranch running." "What?"
"What?" Madison whispered. 1 year, Buck said firmly. "If you can do that for 1 year without complaining, without quitting, without running to social media, if you can prove you love this land more than what it can buy you, then we'll talk about family again." Madison was crying. "Daddy, please." "Those are your options," Buck said. "Take them or pack your things with your brothers." Madison nodded slowly, broken. "I'll stay. I'll do it." Buck turned to his wife. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Sarah," Buck said quietly. Sarah was trembling, tears streaming down her face. 45 years, Buck said. 45 years of marriage. I gave you everything. A beautiful home, security, comfort, a name that meant something in this state. Respect. Buck, please let me explain. You abandoned me when you thought I was dying. You complained that I smelled like death. You had me moved to a back guest room like I was an embarrassment. Sarah sobbed. I was scared. You brought another man into my home, Buck said, and his voice finally cracked with emotion. Into my barn, a boy half your age, while I lay in that room thinking my wife still loved me, thinking I still had one person left. I made a mistake. I was lonely. You not talking to me. I was testing you, Buck roared, and you
failed." The room echoed with his voice. Buck took a breath and steadied himself. "You have 24 hours to pack your belongings and leave this house." Sarah gasped. "No, Buck, no." "My lawyer has divorce papers ready. You'll receive what Wyoming law requires, probably a settlement, but nothing more. Not this house, not the ranch, nothing." "Buck, please, I love you." "If you loved me, you would have stayed." Emma stayed. A 28-year-old girl who put her life on hold, slept on a cot, fed me, bathed me, sang to me, and never once asked what she'd get from it. But my wife of 45 years couldn't handle a few months? Sarah collapsed on the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. Nobody comforted her. Buck turned slowly, and his face softened completely as he looked at his younger daughter. "Emma," he said gently. Emma stepped forward, tears in her eyes, but her head held high. "You stayed," Buck said, his voice thick with emotion. "Through everything. When everyone else left, you stayed. You fed me, you bathed me, you sang to me, you read to me. You held my hand in the drac and promised you'd never leave." Emma's tears spilled over. "You took me away from this poison and brought me to the mountain, to peace, to people who actually cared. You risk your life diving into that cave to save your brother when he didn't deserve it." He reached out and took both of her hands in his. "You're the only one who saw me as your father, not as a bank account, not as an inheritance, just as your daddy. And for that," he turned to Jim Patterson, who had quietly entered the room and was standing by the door with his briefcase. "Jim?" The lawyer stepped forward and opened a folder. He cleared his throat and read formally, "Effective immediately, all properties, assets, businesses, and holdings of Buck Hartley are hereby transferred to Emma Rose Hartley." The room erupted in gasps. "What?" Cole shouted. "Everything?" Madison whispered. Jim continued reading. "This includes the main ranch house and grounds, Hartley Ranch operations and all cattle, Hartley Mountain Lodge, Willow Creek Ranch, all grazing leases, mineral rights, bank accounts, investments, and the original mountain property. Total estimated value, $47 million. Travis put his head in his hands. "Additionally," Jim said, "Emma Rose Hartley is hereby named Chief Executive Officer of Hartley Ranch Operations, with full authority to hire, fire, and make all business decisions." "You're giving her everything?" Cole was red in the face. "She's the youngest. She earned it," Buck roared. "She was the only one who loved me more than my money. The only one." He turned back to Emma, who was crying so hard she could barely stand. "It's all yours, sweetheart," Buck said softly, pulling her into a hug. "Every acre, every building, every cow, every dollar. You've earned it 1,000 times over." "Daddy!" Emma sobbed into his chest. "I did do it for the money. I did it because I love you." "I know," Buck whispered, stroking her hair like she was a little girl again. "I know you did. That's exactly why you're the only one who deserves it." He held her while she cried, while his other children stared in shock and horror at what they'd lost, while Sarah wept on the couch, while Jim stood quietly holding the papers that changed everything. The sun was setting over the main ranch, painting the Wyoming sky in shades of orange, pink, and deep purple. The fields were green and healthy, the cattle were fat and content, the fences were all mended, the barns were full of good hay. Emma sat in the office that used to be her father's, reviewing sustainable grazing plans with Red Murphy, who was back as foreman and happier than he'd been in years. "Production's up 23% from this time last year," Red said, showing him the numbers. "The old buyers are coming back. Word's spreading that Hartley Ranch is quality again." Emma smiled. "That's because we have quality people again, Red." "That's because we have quality leadership, Miss Emma," Red said with a wink. There was a knock on the door. Dutch poked his head in. "Sorry to interrupt, boss, but there's a young man at the gate asking for work. Says he heard we treat our hands right. Send him in tomorrow for an interview. We can always use good people." After Red and Dutch left, Emma stood and stretched. She walked to the window and looked out over the land she now owned. It still felt surreal sometimes. Hartley Mountain Lodge was thriving as an ecotourism destination. Families came from all over the country to experience authentic ranch life. The original homestead cabin had been restored and turned into a small museum that told the Hartley family story. The real story, the one about hard work and integrity.
Madison was still there, believe it or not. She'd completed her year as a ranch hand and had asked to stay on. She worked with the horses now, giving riding lessons to the lodge guests. And Emma had to admit, her sister had changed. She was humble now, grateful, real. "I was a spoiled brat," Madison had told her one evening. "I didn't know what I had, but I know now. Thank you for giving me a chance to prove myself." Emma had hugged her sister and slowly, carefully, they were rebuilding something. Travis was working as a wilderness guide in Colorado. He'd called last month, his voice different, older, wiser. "I'm doing honest work," he'd said. "It doesn't pay much, but I sleep better at night. I'm sorry, Emma, for everything. Maybe someday I can earn back the right to call you sister." "You never lost that right," Emma had told him. "You're working on yourself. That's what matters." Cole was somewhere in Montana working as a ranch hand on someone else's property. Emma had heard through the grapevine that he was living in a bunkhouse, mucking stalls, and finally learning what the word humble meant. Sarah had moved to a small apartment in town. She worked at a Western wear boutique. Emma had seen her once, from a distance. Sarah had looked smaller somehow, older, alone. Emma felt sad about it, but she didn't regret her father's decision. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Emma walked out of the house and saw her father standing by the corral, his boot propped on the bottom rail, watching the sunset. She walked up beside him and mirrored his stance. "Beautiful evening," Buck said. "Sure is," Emma agreed. "You've done good work, daughter. Better than I ever did. The ranch is stronger now than it's been in 10 years. "I learned from the best," Emma said, bumping his shoulder with hers. Buck smiled. "You brought heart back to this place. That's what it needed." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Buck said, "Want to go for a ride? The horses could use the exercise." Emma grinned. "Racy to the barn." 10 minutes later, father and daughter were on horseback, riding the fence line of the north pasture, Buck on his old bay gelding, Storm, and Emma on her paint mare, Bella. They rode side by side in comfortable silence, the only sounds the creak of saddle leather, the soft thud of hoofs on packed earth, and the evening wind whistling through the grass. Buck looked over at his daughter. The setting sun caught her profile, and for a moment he saw her mother, the woman Sarah used to be 40 years ago, before bitterness and greed had twisted her into someone unrecognizable. "You know what I'm most proud of?" Buck said. "What's that, Daddy?" "That you didn't let what they did poison you. You could have become bitter, angry, hard, but you didn't. You stayed kind." "I won't lie, Daddy. There were moments I wanted to hate them, but then I realized that's exactly what would have destroyed me. Hate destroys the person carrying it more than the person it's aimed at." Buck nodded slowly. "Joseph Running Bear told me something similar. He said, anger is a fire. It can warm you or consume you. He's a wise man. So is my daughter." They rode in silence for another few minutes. Then Emma said, "Do you ever regret it? The test? Finding out the truth?" Buck thought about it. "No," he said finally. "It broke my heart, that's true. But I'd rather live with a broken heart and clear eyes than spend my last years surrounded by lies and false love. At least now I know. And I know I have one child who truly loves me. That's more than a lot of men get." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away and smiled at him. They reached the top of a hill overlooking the entire ranch. Miles and miles of rolling grassland, the mountains purple in the distance, the ranch buildings nestled in the valley below with lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled.
Buck pulled Storm to a stop, and Emma did the same with Bella. "You see all that?" Buck said, gesturing to the land spread out before them. "Yes, sir." "It's yours now. Every blade of grass, every fence post, every drop of water. But more than that," Buck turned to look at his daughter, "you've got something more valuable. You've got integrity. You've got character. You've got a heart that stayed true when everything around you was falling apart." He reached over and put his weathered, calloused hand on top of hers. "The land will take care of you if you take care of it. But that heart of yours, that's what will make the difference. That's the real inheritance I'm giving you." Emma couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They spilled down her cheeks as she squeezed her father's hand. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, Emma girl, more than all the land in Wyoming." Below them, back at the ranch headquarters, Red Murphy and Dutch were closing up the barn for the night. They looked up and saw the two figures on horseback silhouetted against the sunset sky on the hilltop. "Look at that," Red said. Dutch shaded his eyes. "That's Buck and Miss Emma." "She's got her daddy's heart, that one," Red said, his voice full of respect. "Always did, always did." They stood there for a moment, two old cowboys who'd seen everything, watching the next generation take its rightful place. "You know what?" Red said. "Everything's gonna be all right. The ranch is in good hands." "The best hands," Dutch said. Inside the main house, Madison was in the kitchen making dinner. She looked out the window and saw her father and sister on that distant hilltop, and something in her chest ached, not with jealousy anymore, but with regret for all the time she had wasted, all the chances she had thrown away. But there was hope, because Emma had given her a second chance, and this time, she wasn't going to waste it. As the last light faded and the stars began to appear in the vast Wyoming sky, Buck and Emma finally turned their horses and headed back down toward the barn. "Ready to head in?" Buck asked. "Not quite yet," Emma said. "Race you back?" Buck grinned that same wild grin he'd had as a young man. "You're on." And with a whoop, they both kicked their horses into a gallop, racing across the darkening grassland, the wind in their hair, their laughter carried away on the evening breeze. Father and daughter, rancher and heir, two people who understood that real wealth wasn't measured in dollars or acres, but in loyalty, love, and staying true when everything else falls apart. When the test came, everyone showed their true colors. Some chose money over love. Some chose themselves over family. But one person chose loyalty when there was nothing to gain, and that made all the difference. Buck Hartley built an empire with his hands, but his daughter Emma built something even more valuable. A legacy of integrity in a world that had forgotten what that word meant.
In the end, it's not about how much land you own or how much money you have in the bank. It's about who stands beside you when you have nothing, who stays when everyone else leaves, who loves you for who you are, not what you can give them. Emma passed that test, and she inherited more than money. She inherited the respect of everyone who knew the truth. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what you think about Emma's loyalty. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Remember, real wealth is measured in loyalty, not dollars. Until next time, God bless you and your family.